So this session is Redesign Your Website in 4,000 Easy Steps. My name is Michele and this is Rich. And today we're basically going to be sharing an approach that we've been doing for the last few months that entails updating our website bit by bit rather than in one huge redesign. And I want to give you a little bit of context. We both work here at this campus. We work in the library and manage that website. And for anyone who's unfamiliar, UCSF is all graduate level and all health sciences. So our particular audience is the students, faculty, and researchers in that area. But the things we're going to share with you today are really applicable in any setting. Now on to redesign. In general, redesigns are done every 3 years or so. That's become kind of standard practice. And most of the time, those redesigns, the assumption is that they're going to be a total and complete redesign with a big launch at the end. And one of the reasons is that people assume that there are all these dependencies and that you can't really change or improve one part of your site without touching everything else. So the practice has been just to do everything all at once. There's also the implication, too, in this kind of approach that you have to get everything right this time because chances are you won't get a chance to redesign for years, literally. But doing a complete redesign like that is not a small undertaking, and it definitely takes a lot of time, and it often takes a lot of money and people being involved. And that can be a particularly tough sell in an academic setting, and even more so in times of lean budgets where every penny really counts. And probably the biggest downside is that when you're busy redesigning, you're spending a lot of time on the back end making plans, and your users are left to deal with the live site, which may be falling out of date, maybe lacking features that have become fundamental. So that's not really serving them very well. So for all those reasons, we decided to take a different approach.
So our previous redesign was 6 years prior, which is an insanely long period of time, obviously. So we had to make a move, but the longer we waited, in a lot of ways, the harder it was to, because more things got glommed onto the website and more internal processes were deeply embedded in what was going on, et cetera, et cetera. So we decided to do take a page from people who do this in a more lean or agile way, and just try to do something all the time, always reconfiguring something. And this had a lot of benefits, some of which were anticipated, some of which were unanticipated. In order to do that sort of process, one thing we had to change was a bit of culture. We had to make sure that staff and users were aware that kind of things could change. People are kind of used to that in this day and age. If you use Facebook, something changes, you hate it for about somewhere between 30 seconds and 13 hours, and then you forget it was ever any different than it was before. But it also means next slide. It also means that you have to be prepared to fail. You have to accept that failure is in fact an option. And by failure, though, we don't mean that the whole site just collapses. What I mean is that, we're going to try this new way of styling menus, and people actually don't realize that that's a menu now. It looks too much like a button. So, but the thing is, if you're constantly doing these sorts of things, if you try something and it doesn't work, it's easy to undo because it's not part of this huge, all-encompassing plan to change everything. And if you change one thing here, 14 things here have to change. But you also avoid the situation where, okay, we're going to plan for 3 months, and then we're going to do the redesign, and then by the time we actually have the redesign implemented, the original design is 1.5 years old, so we're already 1.5 years behind the curve.
Another thing that we did up front before we started this process was to set aside some time to really think about our audience and their needs, and to actually articulate some guiding principles that we were going to use. And looking at this list, some of these things seem fairly obvious, but it really was worth the time to give it thought and to get them down because they've been helpful to us in making arguments with other stakeholders. And it acts as a good rudder to kind of keep us on track and help us decide what next we might want to improve. And another thing that we did to kind of guide us was, we needed user feedback to determine, what do we do next. We made some changes. The whole idea with an iterative approach is that you see how things fly and then react and go from there. So we used a variety of tools, from heat maps, which you can see here on the screen. We used interviews, we used Google Analytics, we used some brief user tests. So all of that together gave us a lot of insight. And I wanted to emphasize that when you're talking about feedback, regular is much more important than comprehensive. We did not have a dedicated staff and a usability lab to do really full-blown stuff, but in spite of that, we were able to kind of go in and out and get quick bits of information, and it really was very helpful.
So this is a screenshot of our website as it looked in February. It also happens to be a screenshot of what it looked like in March and through half of April. We've been doing this for like three and a half months, something like that. Anyway, a whole lot of links, a lot going on. So the first, we're going to cover just a few of the things we did because, like I said, we tried to do something every week, as much as every week, and certainly no less often than one thing a month. The very first thing I wanted done, and there are a couple other people involved in this discussion too, but I really wanted these things over here in the gutters gone, because to me that looks like a 1997 website. And it's just a simple look thing, and that's okay. So after we removed it, the site looked like this. It looks a little more modern, open, airy. But you may also notice, if you are a keen observer, and if we haven't, if I'm not like boring you yet, you may have noticed other things changed. I'm not going to call attention to what those things were, but I'm just going to say that you might want to consider that when you're removing cosmetic stuff, if there are things you want to get rid of that might be politically problematic, but your users are never going to notice, this is a great time to do it. Because you go and look at the site, it's like, oh, something's different. It must be the gutters are gone. When in fact, there are a few other things that were moved, missing, changed. Better to get forgiveness than permission. If you're thinking along those routes, that's the time to do it. Okay, so another thing we did is we really wanted to fix menus and navigation. So if you look in the blue banner area at the top, there are these 4 buttons. That's our nav bar. And it didn't used to have the little down carrots that indicate that it might be something that drops down. And it was problematic from a usability perspective. First of all, it uses hover to drop down. So if you're on a touch device, it doesn't work. But they look like buttons, so people would click them. So another thing, whoops, go back. Another thing is over here on the right-hand side, we have popular resources and key services, and there's 2 columns, and there's all sorts of stuff. And the heat map indicated that a lot of these links get used incredibly heavily, and a lot of them didn't get used at all by anyone ever. So what we did is we, Michele and Erin Hayes, who's not here right now, but worked really hard to work with staff and also interviewing students at a periodic meeting we have with representative students to figure out what should go in the menus. You noticed before, I'm sorry, I'm just making go back and forth. Before we had things like, it was very focused on the way we in the library think about the site. Think about the library. So classes, consulting, and help. What does that mean? Are classes curricular classes, or are they classes offered by the library? To us it was clear. To an end user, it's just a confusing mess. But now it's based on what the user is actually trying to do. Search and find, use the library as a physical space for the most part, although not always. Research and course support. So course support is curricular stuff. Research is finding papers, publishing data, that sort of stuff. Also, we took that right-hand side where there are key services and whatever the other one was that was unclear what was what goes where, why they were 2 columns, why there were so many of them. We just made it popular links. Now it's abundantly clear that what this is what people actually use. And that was kind of in the guiding principles that Michele highlighted before, that we really want to focus on making the site reflecting how users use the site, how they do use the site, how they want to use the site, and not how the library wants people to use the site, and what image we want to project is actually the secondary function and not the key function. So we also made the links, since there's fewer of them, we could add more white space, which improves usability on touch devices and so on and so forth. So, okay, so for the previous heat map, the things that got used a lot were the search box and these links over here. These links over here are mostly things that send you off to other resources. But the thing that got used the most that was actually like part of our site, besides the search box, and usually when people were searching, they were searching for papers and stuff that wouldn't be on our site, databases and whatnot. The thing that got used the most is ours thing down here in the lower left. Now you don't want the thing that everyone wants to know in the lower left. I mean, it's better than in the lower right, but really we want it at the top. So we decided we were gonna take that nav stuff, which still looks like buttons, move it down to be nav, and put the hours up there. So now, we also did a few other things. You can see we reversed the field and the top and everything. But now the hours are right there at the top where you might actually, see them quickly. Now this is really bad if you're looking for engagement and people to be on your site forever, but we're not really looking to engage people. People come to our site, they want to do something. They want to know when we're open or they want to find a paper. So actually the longer they spend on the site, arguably, is a sign that we're doing it all wrong. So anyway, now let's talk about some internal pages, shall we?
Yes, there's been a lot of emphasis on the home page because that's an entry point for many people, and we wanted to make that as clear as possible. But the bottom line is that users are often going somewhere else, whether it's to go read a paper, or they might need to drill down into our site to a more specific spot, like what you see here. And this is an example of kind of an updating and an improvement of an internal page. You can notice just at a glance, this is very text heavy. It's really geared toward who we are as the library and what we can offer, rather than being geared toward the user. And it's as many links as we can squeeze in, very link heavy. And for anyone who doesn't know this, libraries love to give you as much information as possible. It's in the blood. But the bottom line is users coming to your site, often that's not what they need. So we reworked this page, and now there's considerably less text, and it's much more visual, and it still has contact information if you need some help and support, but front and center there are the main things that a user might come here and want to do. So it's very easy for them to land on this page and get right to their task and not get bogged down in searching through the information.
So don't do this, Michele, but if you go to the slides online and you look at the first image we had of the website and then jump right to the last image, you see that it kind of looks like half of a redesign has already happened. And that's kind of what we're going for, is that we're not going to be able to just do the redesign planned and then just drop it in place all at one time and have everybody readjust immediately. But by doing things constantly and being bold about what we're doing and not being afraid to make mistakes, we can get there in that way. Want to talk about the response? Want to talk about the response that we got? We don't have a whole lot of time in 20 minutes, but we talk about user response and section, blah, blah, blah. But the one thing I did want to point out was something very unexpected. When we went to change the menus, we made a point to talk to the people in the library. We talked to students and whatnot, but we also talked to the people in the library who deal with users face-to-face every day. People that we call it access services, but you might think of it as the circulation desk and some other groups as well. And we were doing it because we were trying to avoid blowback. And so what actually happened when we went and talked to them about these changes is not only did we get great feedback, which was fantastic, but also we got repeated statements to the effect of, thank you for including us in this process. And by not having one huge redesign every 6 years or whatever, by doing things every week, we talk to them a lot and we develop a relationship that wasn't there. We get, and we build communication. And we allow the entire library to move in a more focused way towards what it needs to do. So that was fantastic. Okay, this is just a quick shot of some templates and mock-ups and wireframes and whatnot that we used to try different ideas on people before actually implementing them. We're kind of short on time, so.
Yeah, we'll move along. Really, we've only been actively doing this for a few months. But I think already we have some lessons that we would share with you. I think the biggest one is that it's important to be transparent. As Rich was just saying, we really learned a lot and got even more than we expected out of being very open about what changes we were considering, getting people to weigh in on them, tweaking things a little bit. So that's a really important thing. It's also key to get both your users and your staff members acclimated to the fact that the website is a living thing. It's evolving all the time, just like the rest of the web. You don't want people to feel like, well, I'm just always going to blindly go to the same spot on the site, and when that changes, I'm going to have a meltdown. So that's part of the process too. And in our experience, this approach really has been more efficient and more effective. In a relatively short amount of time, we've made some significant changes, and pretty successfully so. And I think at this point in time, and we still have more to learn, of course, but we have some conclusions, and I think the big one is that we will continue to use this process because it's been working for us. We're going to continue to do the iterative approach and get feedback and just make it an ongoing thing. We do believe that it better serves the users. We're able to stay much more up to the minute with what people expect. We can't always do things overnight if there's a new technology that develops, but we're much more on top of what the users are looking for and expecting based on their other interactions on the web. And finally, we have not overlooked the fact that once in a while there'll be a need for a complete platform change or maybe a complete graphic design update that does touch the whole site. But I think the thinking for us is that if your content and your functionality are under good control, as they would be in this approach, it's much easier to make those other changes that come up every so often. And I think that is all we have to share at this point in time. You can certainly send us follow-up questions, and if we have any time left, we can take one or two now.